Folks gathered in the square, drawn by the promise of spectacle. They came to laugh, to jeer, to watch a soul be sold as if she were livestock. At the center stood a wooden platform, the auction block, and on it, shackled at the wrists, was a young woman. Her name was Clara. She stood barefoot, her dress torn at the hem, her chin lifted in defiance though her hands trembled against the iron chains. Auctioneer voice, loud and showy. "Step right up, gentlemen. Step right up." A strong set of hands, a pretty face, a woman fit for cooking, cleaning, and more besides. "Who'll make the first bid for this fine bride?" The crowd roared with laughter. Men called out crude jokes, some offering coins just to see her blush. But Clara did not blush. She locked her eyes on the horizon, as though daring the whole town not to break her spirit. Townsman 1 mocking, "Don't look so high and mighty, girl. You'll be scrubbing boots for the nights through." Townsman 2 laughing, "She ain't worth more than a mule. I'll bid $1, just to watch her cry." The auctioneer slammed his hand against the post, grinning at the cruel amusement. Auctioneer, $1? 1? Who'll give me 2? The bidding crept forward, not out of respect, but ridicule. Every laugh was a lash. Every sneer, another chain wrapped around Clara's heart. Still, she kept her back straight, her eyes burning with a fire that no shackle could tame. Auctioneer, louder. "Come now, gentlemen. A woman like this is rare out here. Strong, young, and spirited. Surely worth more than pocket change." And then, from the back of the crowd, a voice that didn't join the laughter. Quiet but firm male voice. "I'll bid." Heads turned. The crowd parted, murmurs rippling like wind through dry grass. It was Elias, a man of broad shoulders, worn coat, and eyes that had seen too much sorrow. A rancher, a widower, known to keep to himself on the edge of town. Auctioneer surprised. Well, well, look who's come down from the hills. Elias, the hermit rancher himself. "And while you bid, sir." Elias stepped forward, gazed steady on Clara. He saw not a spectacle, not a prize. He saw a woman standing proud despite humiliation. And he saw something else, something only he could name. Elias, slow and steady. "My son needs her." The square went still. Laughter died on mocking lips. For a moment, even the wind seemed to hush. Clara blinked, startled, her fire flickering with confusion. Not "I need her," not "she'll serve me," but "my son needs her." The auctioneer cleared his throat, fumbling for words. Auctioneer, uneasy. I suppose that's a bid then." "Sold." "Sold to Elias the rancher." The gavel came down. The chains rattled. And in that single moment, Clara's fate changed. Not freedom, not yet, but no longer the plaything of cruel men. Elias stepped forward, hands calloused yet careful, as he reached to unlock the iron from her wrists. The crowd muttered, some angry, some amused, but none dared laugh aloud. Not after hearing his words. They had laughed when she was auctioned in chains, but no one was laughing now. For a lonely rancher had spoken, and with that, a story of need, loss, and unexpected redemption had just begun. Low creak of wagon wheels, hoofbeats echo on the dry silence between two strangers. The chains were gone, but Clara could still feel the weight of them pressing against her skin. She sat stiffly in the back of Elias's wagon, hands folded in her lap, eyes darting from the road to the man driving beside her. The crowd's jeers still echoed in her memory, but louder still were his words. "My son needs you." Clara, voice tight, distrustful. "You didn't buy me for yourself, then?" Elias, after a pause. "No, I bought you so my boy might have a chance at something better than silence." Elias's voice was deep, steady, but carried a heaviness, as though each word cost him effort. Clara studied him, sunburned skin, lines etched by grief, broad hands gripping the reins as though they were the only thing keeping him upright. Clara, bitterly, "Still sounds like a cage to me, just one with different walls." Elias, calm but firm. "Then leave when you're ready. I won't hold you, but stay long enough to meet him. That's all I ask." His words hung in the hot air, honest and plain. Clara had expected ownership, demands, not choice. That unsettled her more than cruelty might have. The wagon rolled on, away from the noise of town, across miles of parched grass and lonely mesquite. Clara's eyes wandered to the horizon, where the land seemed endless, wide enough to swallow a soul whole. For the first time in months, she felt no leering eyes, no laughter, no iron biting her wrists. Just silence and the creak of old wheels carrying her toward an unknown fate. Soft night insects, distant coyote cry. By the time the wagon rattled into the ranch yard, dusk had painted the sky in bruised purples and gold. The house was small, weathered gray, its windows dark but for the faint flicker of lamplight. And there, standing at the edge of the porch, half hidden in shadow, was the boy. Daniel. He couldn't have been more than 8. Barefoot, skinny as a fence post, his mop of hair tangled from wind. His wide eyes fixed on Clara, curious, cautious, and silent. Clara, soft, kneeling a little. "Hello there. Daniel, is it?" But the boy said nothing. He only backed away, slipping behind the porch rail like a frightened colt. Elias, quietly, to Clara. "He don't talk. Not since his mama passed. Been near 2 years now." Clara, voice softening. "I'm sorry." Elias, quietly. "So am I." Clara's chest tightened. For the first time, she saw Elias not just as a man who had bought her freedom, but as a father drowning in his own helplessness. Inside, the cabin smelled of smoke and leather, the table worn with years of use. Elias set down a single plate, bread and beans. Clara noticed just one plate. Clara, gently. "You don't set the table for him?" Elias, shaking his head. "He won't come inside most nights. Eats what I leave out for him on the porch. I reckon he keeps his distance 'cause it hurts less that way." Clara stared at the rough plate of beans. She thought of the chains, the jeering crowd, the auction block. Then she thought of the boy, silent, alone in the dark. And she wondered which of them was more captive. Later that night, Clara lay awake on the narrow bed Elias had offered her. The house creaked with the weight of silence. Through the thin walls, she could hear Elias's voice, low, broken, praying. Elias, murmuring prayer. "Lord, I don't know if I done right. I don't know if this woman can mend what's broken. But I'll take any mercy you send us. For the boy's sake. For Daniel." Clara closed her eyes, tears stinging though she fought them back. No man had prayed for her. No one had ever spoken her presence as mercy. For the first time since the chains, Clara wondered maybe this wasn't a cage. Maybe, just maybe it was a chance. Chapter 3. The Silent Boy. Morning sounds, rooster crowing, wind brushing against the grass, the faint clatter of tin pots in the kitchen. The sun rose slow over Elias's ranch, washing the weathered boards in pale light. Clara had slept little, her mind turning over the man's prayer and the boy's hollow eyes. She rose early, pulling her shawl close against the cool air, and found her way to the yard. There he was again, Daniel. The boy perched on a fence rail, knees drawn to his chest, watching the barnyard as if it were safer than people. His eyes flicked toward Clara, quick and sharp, like a colt unbroken by hand or rope. Clara, softly trying, "Good morning, Daniel." No answer, only the shuffle of bare feet as he hopped down, turning away. But not far, just enough to keep space between them. Elias, stepping out of the barn, gruff but kind. "Don't mind him. He sees more than he lets on." Clara, quietly. "He's afraid of me." Elias, shaking his head. "He's afraid of everyone." Clara's gaze lingered on the boy's small back as he disappeared into the stable shadow. She knew that feeling of shrinking away, of hiding where no laughter or cruelty could reach. Clara busied herself with the chores, fetching water from the well, mending a torn shirt left crumpled on a chair, sweeping dust from the corners of a home that had been silent too long. Elias watched her quietly, as though measuring something he couldn't put to words. Clara, noticing the patched shirts and worn boots stacked by the door. "You've been trying to hold this place together by yourself." Elias, quietly, continuing to whittle a piece of wood. "Trying. Don't mean I'm succeeding." Later, while Elias worked the cattle, Clara carried a small plate of cornbread to the porch where Daniel lingered in silence. She set it down carefully, kneeling so her eyes were level with his. "Clara, gentle. I don't bite. You know that, don't you?" The boy's eyes darted to hers, then to the bread. Slowly, carefully, he took it. Clara smiled. That afternoon, as Clara hummed to herself while hanging laundry on the line, Daniel appeared again, this time closer. He didn't speak, but he left something on the porch step, a smooth stone, polished by creek water. Clara picked it up, puzzled. Clara, to herself. A gift. She glanced toward the boy. He was already walking away, but not running this time. For the first time since she'd met him, Clara felt the faintest thread of connection. Evening crickets, fire crackling inside the cabin. That night, Clara sat by the small fire, her hands folded in her lap. Elias sat across from her, boots unlaced, the lamplight casting long shadows. Clara, softly, watching the flames. He left me a stone today. Elias, looking up surprised. He did. Clara nodding, like he was trying to say something, just not with words. Elias, after a pause. That's more than he's done in a long while. Silence stretched between them, comfortable this time. Clara could almost hear the weight lifting, if only a little, from the man across the fire. But when she lay down later, she found sleep haunted. The laughter of the crowd returned, chains rattling in her dreams. She woke with a start, clutching her wrists. And then she heard it, soft footsteps in the hall. Daniel stood there, in the dark, clutching a small carved horse in his hand. He didn't speak, but he looked at Clara, really looked at her. For a heartbeat, she felt something stir in her chest. Recognition, as if the boy saw her scars, just as she saw his. Clara, whispering, "It's all right, you don't have to talk. I understand." Daniel didn't answer, but he didn't run, either. He just set the little horse on her nightstand and walked away. Clara touched the carving, rough and worn from a child's hand. For the first time since the auction, she felt something she hadn't dared hope for. Not freedom, not yet, but belonging, perhaps. Chapter 4, Learning to Belong. Morning ambience, clucking hens, the creak of a pump handle, wind rustling dry grass. By the fourth dawn on Elias's ranch, Clara no longer sat idle. She rose with the sun, sleeves rolled, hands quick at work. There were chickens to feed, floors to sweep, and clothes to mend. The chains that once bound her wrists were replaced by tools of labor, needle, bucket, broom. And though her body ached from work, her spirit stirred with something unfamiliar. Purpose. Elias, stepping into the yard, watching her handle the hens. "You've got away with them. They near peck my hands raw when I try." Clara, smirking faintly without looking up. Animals sense fear, or anger, or loneliness. Elias, after a pause. "Guess that explains it then." Elias's words carried no jest, only truth. Clara looked up at him, catching for the first time the shadow of sorrow beneath his steady frame. And then there was Daniel. The boy hovered near, always at the edges. Too shy for words, but never far from Clara's side. When she chopped vegetables, he lingered by the doorway. When she fetched water, he trailed behind at a distance. Each day, the space between them grew smaller. Scene. Clara hanging laundry, humming faintly. Daniel edges closer. One afternoon, Clara sang softly, a tune from her childhood. Low, sweet, a melody meant to chase away fear. Daniel stopped in his tracks, eyes wide. He didn't speak, didn't move. He just listened, the corners of his mouth twitching with something that looked like memory. Elias, coming up from the barn, froze too, watching the boy, watching Clara. Something softened in his gaze, a warmth he thought he'd buried with his wife. Clara notices Elias staring, defensive tone. "What? Don't look at me like that." Elias quietly. "Like what?" Clara, folding laundry briskly. "Like I belong here. I don't. I was sold into this place, same as any cage." Elias, voice low, deliberate. "You're not owned, Clara. Not here. I didn't buy a servant. I brought you 'cause my boy needs someone to reach him. If you choose to leave, I won't stop you." Clara, turning on him, voice trembling. "Then why keep me at all?" Elias, after a long pause. "Because sometimes what we need ain't the same as what we deserve. And I reckon you need us as much as we need you." Clara stared at him, speechless. No man had spoken to her like that, like she was more than her past, more than chains or shame. That evening, supper was different. Daniel, usually perched outside with his food, stepped into the cabin. Quiet as snowfall, he slid onto the bench beside Clara. He didn't speak, but he didn't run either. Clara glanced at him, then at Elias, who said nothing, his hand trembling slightly as he passed the boy a piece of bread. It was the smallest of steps, but in a house starved of laughter and voices, it was a beginning. Later, night wind outside, crackle of fire. Still, when the darkness settled, Clara's old ghosts returned. She woke to dreams of the auction block, men's laughter, iron cutting into her wrists. She rose, stepping outside into the cool night, seeking breath beneath the stars. She didn't notice Elias at first, sitting on the porch, carving wood by lamplight. He looked up, meeting her gaze. Elias gently. Nightmares. Clara, bitter laugh. Can't close my eyes without hearing them laugh. Elias, softly, almost a whisper. I hear her voice. My wife's. Every night. Sometimes I think grief carves us in his silence more than death ever could. Clara looked at him, truly looked, and for the first time saw not just a rancher, but a man hollowed by loss. Clara, after a pause, voice softer than before. I don't want to be owned, Elias. Elias, setting the carving knife down. Then don't be. Be needed. That's different. The word struck something in Clara's heart. She turned away, eyes misting, but she carried them with her as she went back inside. For the first time since the chains had been struck off, she dared to believe. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't a prisoner here. Maybe she was learning to belong. Chapter 5. The Threat Returns. Evening sounds, dogs barking faintly, saloon piano echoing in the distance. Rowdy laughter carried on the wind. Peace on the ranch was fragile. Like thin ice over a winter creek, it could crack with the lightest weight. And word traveled fast in small towns. It didn't take long before the laughter Clara had left behind at the auction found its way back to her. Scene shift, dusty road outside the ranch. Hooves approach, men laughing drunk. One night, as the sun dipped low and the sky bled red over the hills, 4 riders came up the road. Faces red with whiskey, voices thick with scorn. Townsman 1 mocking call. Elias, we hear you bought yourself a wife at market. Or was it a servant? Hard to tell. Townsman 2, sneering. Didn't think you had it in you. Thought you buried your pride with your woman. Inside, Clara froze, a bowl slipping from her hands and clattering to the floor. The sound made Daniel flinch, shrinking into the shadows. Elias rose from the table, calm but steady, his boots heavy on the wooden floorboards as he stepped outside. Elias low, firm. You've had your fun. Time to ride home. Townsman 3, mocking laughter. Or what? You'll sick your silent boy on us? Maybe your new prize will come out and wag her tongue for us instead. Clara's breath caught. The chains rattled in her memory, the laughter of men thick in her ears. She pressed her back to the wall, trembling. Elias stood tall on the porch, hand resting on the rail, voice as steady as stone. Elias, slow and firm. You'll not speak of her that way. Not here. Not anywhere. The men jeered louder, but there was an edge of unease in their voices. For all his silence, Elias was not a man to provoke lightly. Townsman 1, spitting in the dirt. She'll never be more than what she was on that block. Don't fool yourself, Elias. Chains don't break that easy. With a whistle and a cruel laugh, the men turned their horses and rode off, leaving dust and venom behind. Clara collapsed against the wall, breath shaking. Clara, whispering to herself, broken. They'll never let me forget. I'll always be chained. When Elias returned inside, he found her with her face hidden in her hands. Daniel clung to her skirt, silent but wide-eyed, as if her fear were his own. Clara, voice cracking, to Elias. Why'd you bring me here? I'll only bring you shame. You heard them. They'll never let us be. Elias, kneeling by her, steady but gentle. I didn't bring you here for them. I brought you here for him. For Daniel. Clara, shaking her head. And if I can't save him? If I'm not enough? Elias, softly, almost broken. Then I've failed him again. The word struck Clara harder than any insult. Elias wasn't a man who wasted speech, but when he spoke, it was truth. His fear wasn't for his pride, it was for his son. For the first time, Clara saw not a lonely rancher, not even a protector, but a man drowning beneath the weight of love and failure. She lifted her eyes to him, her voice trembling but sure. Clara, then we don't fail him. Not you, not me, not together. The silence that followed was thick, not with despair, but with something else. A fragile trust, a seed planted in the scorched earth of both their wounds. Daniel's hand slipped into Clara's, small and shaking. She held it tight, and for a fleeting moment, those shadows still pressed at the windows, Clara felt the faintest glimmer of strength. Not freedom, not peace, not yet, but resolve. Chapter 6, The Boy Speaks. Wind howling, shutters rattling. The first heavy drops of rain on the roof. The storm rolled in sudden and fierce, lightning cracking over the hills, rain pelting the ranch with a fury that shook the windows. Inside, Clara stoked the fire, her eyes darting toward Daniel. The boy sat pale and trembling, his small body shivering as though the storm outside had found its way into his bones. Clara, worried, kneeling beside him. Daniel, what's wrong? His skin burned beneath her touch. Fever. His lips were cracked, his breaths shallow and uneven. Clara, calling urgently. Elias. Boots pounding. Elias bursts in from the barn, soaked to the skin. Clara, frantic. He's burning up. Elias, he's too hot. He can't breathe right. Elias, voice shaking though he fights to stay steady. Lord above. For the first time since she'd known him, Clara saw panic in Elias's eyes. The man who stood unshaken before drunken taunts, who bore silence like armor. Now he trembled. Elias, muttering to himself. Not again, not him too. Those words pierced Clara's chest. This was the wound beneath all the others. Elias's wife gone to sickness, leaving Daniel silent in her absence. And now, the boy was slipping through his fingers. Clara, fiercely, grabbing Elias's hands. No, don't you dare give up on him. Help me. Get water. Get cloth. We can fight this. Elias obeyed, staggering to the well, while Clara pressed cool cloths to Daniel's skin, whispering every prayer she had ever known. She told him stories, too, soft tales of rivers and stars, of mothers who never left their children's sides. Hours passed. The storm raged on. Clara held the boy through each fevered cry, singing old songs in a trembling voice. Elias paced the room like a caged beast, helpless, until Clara caught his gaze. Clara, firm but soft. Sit. Be here with him. He needs his father's strength. Elias knelt by the bed, his rough hand covering his son's small one. Tears carved lines through the dirt on his face. Elias, breaking, whispering, Danny, I'm here, son. I never left. Please, please don't leave me too. And then it happened. Daniel stirred, lips trembling. His eyes fluttered open, glassy but focused, not on his father but on Clara. His voice came like a cracked whisper, the first sound he'd given the world in 2 years. Daniel, weak but clear. Mama. The word tore through the storm, fragile and miraculous. Clara gasped, tears flooding her eyes. Elias froze, his breath catching. Clara, choking back sobs, cradling him. No, sweetheart. I'm not her, but I'm here. I'm here for you. Always. Daniel's tiny hand clung to her sleeve, desperate, anchoring himself to her presence. Elias bowed his head, shoulders shaking, as if the weight of grief and hope collided all at once. Elias, voice breaking, hoarse. You gave him back. You gave me back my boy. Through the night, Clara kept watch, cooling his fever, holding him close. By dawn, Daniel's breathing eased, his fever breaking with the storm. The ranch was quiet again. Quiet but changed, because silence no longer ruled the boy. Clara, whispering to herself, watching him sleep. Not chains, no. These are bonds I choose. And as the sun broke through the clouds, Clara knew she was no longer a prisoner of her past. She was part of a family being born out of loss, forged in fire and storm. Chapter 7. The Bride Who Wasn't Broken. Morning sun rising over the prairie. Birds singing after the storm. The ranch looks fresh, washed by rain. The storm had passed, leaving the land glistening with new light. For the first time, the ranch felt less like a lonely outpost and more like a home. Daniel was resting, his fever broken, his little hand still clutching Clara's shawl as if afraid she might vanish with the dawn. But beyond the ranch, word had spread. The town whispered about the runaway bride, about the auction, about the rancher who bought her not for himself, but for his son. Some mocked, some sneered, but others began to wonder. Scene shifts, the town square, a week later. People gathering, curious. Horses tied, wagons creaking. Murmurs fill the air. It was Elias's idea. To return, not in shame, but in defiance. Clara's voice, nervous but steady. Are you certain about this? They'll laugh again. Elias firm, quiet. Let him. You don't bow to chains, Clara. Not anymore. You walk beside me. So they did. Elias leading Daniel by the hand. Clara at his side, chin lifted, eyes unflinching. The auction block still stood in the center of town. The same stage where Clara had been paraded like cattle, her wrists bound in iron. Today, Elias led her straight to it. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Townsperson scoffing. There she is, the bride who couldn't fetch a price. Another sneering. And the fool rancher who wasted coin on her. But Elias did not flinch. He climbed onto the platform, his hand steadying Clara as she followed. Daniel clung to her skirts, small but unafraid. Elias raised his voice. Elias, commanding, voice carrying. You laughed the day she stood here. You mocked her chains. You mocked me. But hear me now. He gestures to Clara, his voice fierce but reverent. This woman is no slave. No purchase. No shame. She is the one who saved my son's life. The one who gave his voice back. She is the heart of my home. The crowd stilled. Mockery faltered. The boy, silent Daniel, took a step forward. His small voice broke through the hush, clear as a bell. Daniel, shy but proud. She's my mama. It was only 3 words, but they cut deeper than any jeer, brighter than any sermon. The square fell silent. Mothers in the crowd clutched their children tighter. Men shifted, shame flickering across their faces. Even those who once sneered could not mock a child's claim to love. Clara, tears brimming, kneeling to Daniel. Oh, sweetheart. She gathers him close, whispering, Yes, yes, I am. Chains could bind a body. But love broke them. From that day forward, the whispers changed. The townsfolk still talked, as people always do, but now they spoke of the rancher's courage, of the boy who found his voice, of the bride who was not broken, but remade. Scene shifts. The ranch again. The family at the table. Daniel laughing softly, trying words out one by one. Elias watching him with quiet joy. Clara serving bread, her eyes bright with peace. Clara had been sold to chains, but she chose family instead. Elias had thought himself too broken for love, but found it standing beside him all along. And Daniel, the boy who lived in silence, spoke again, because one woman chose to stay. So when they laughed, let them laugh no more. Because this was never the tale of a bride in chains. It was the story of a family born from love, stronger than iron, brighter than fire, and freer than the wild prairie sky.